We have this image that's been going around. It's been going viral on X. And I posted it with a holy ish. I knew Bidenflation was bad, but I didn't realize how bad. And you can see McDonald's price increases. Now, they've chosen some select locations, but it's Chick-fil-A's website. It's Taco Bell's website. And then they use the McDonald's app for the LA Figueroa Street location for their sources. In 2019, a medium French fry was $1.79. Now it's $4.19. Yeah. A McChicken was $1.29. Now it's $3.89. Yo, I got news for everybody, right? So I when I order a McChicken, which I don't these days, but when I did, it's because I did not have money. And if I'm going to eat anything like a McChicken, it's because I don't have money. But if I have $4, I certainly don't want to eat a McChicken. Now that it's $4, it's like they're trying to make it. That's crazy. A Big Mac was $3.99. Now it's $7.49. 10 McNuggets was $4.49, $7.58. A cheeseburger was $1. Now it's $3.15. Now, a lot of people have said, well, yeah, but you're talking about LA, LA's expensive or whatever. It's like, okay, how about the Taco Bell website? How about the Chick-fil-A website? This is their website. Look at this. A beefy burrito, $1.69. Now it's $3.69, $2 on top in only a couple of years. Yeah. So we're talking end of 19. So we're talking 4.5 years. You're 18 and you have a part-time job. You're trying to go to college. You're buying your beefy 5-layer burrito for lunch because you're broke. And now you've not gotten a raise. Every 4 years, maybe what? You're making an extra $1 an hour, a couple bucks an hour, but now it's $2 more per burrito. Yep. You're not. Are you making that much more per hour? Has your income gone off enough to afford this?
There's a great point in there that needs to be pinpoint on. When you have low interest rates like we've had for literally the past decade, interest rates at zero, what that does is it means that people that have good credit, that have money, they get the money first. And then it filters through the economy. They get the money when there's no inflation. They got the money 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, before the inflation really hit. And then they went and they bought assets. Sometimes they spent the money, blah, blah, blah. But as the money filters into the economy, and then the inflation comes, because what inflation is too much money chasing after too few products or too few services. Once the money gets to the average person, that's when the prices rise. So you guys have to pay more money for the prices, but your paycheck hasn't gone up yet, because the actual increase in the decrease in the dollar amount hasn't gotten to you yet. So your money, you don't get more money yet. You just have to sit there with less valuable dollars. So the people that actually have money, your banks and wealthy people, they get the money when it's cheap, and they take the loans out when it's cheap, and then it ends up getting the cost gets put onto the poor people. So that's why it's such a massive screwing for the average person when you print money and just give it away, because it goes to the people that don't need it first, and then by the time money actually starts affecting the money supply and inflation happens, the average person is screwed.
Yeah,
so,
when you're working down the socioeconomic ladder, that excess capital in the American economy is getting caught up by wealthy people and not put into consumables,
yes.
Right? So you end up with increased prices as soon as that capital actually hits the consumables. Also, wages are just stickier, right? This is human interactions. This is bosses and employees. Boss doesn't want to give you a raise. Employees want a raise.
And
right?
as the costs for the boss go up, the last thing the boss wants to do is give the employees a raise.
Exactly.
Because their margins are getting tighter.
So your products increase in price faster than the wages can. And one thing that I find is really disgusting from places like the Wall Street Journal editorial board or things like that is that, well, if you actually went to college, and
I hate them so much.
If you went to college in the late Trump years to early Biden years, you're a debtor. And so be thankful that you took out those massive student loans while your interest rates were low, because technically, it's not worth as much as it used to. I mean,
your debt's devalued too.
Your debt's
devalued.
Though. Yeah, it's true.
It is true.
But your debt's devalued.
It's not a great defense, I don't think anyone's going to find this super appealing.
But the issue is stagflation.
Yeah.
If wages were going up, then it would matter.
Exactly.
That's right. So your ability to pay back that debt is based on what?
Your wages, yeah.
Your wages and your ability to earn a living and provide for your family and then pay that debt back, right? Yeah, sure, it might be good. It might devalue your debt, but at the same time, your entire lifestyle is just getting absolutely destroyed.
The only people that made out in that is people that got like a low interest home loan right before the inflation and stuff went. If you got like a 3% mortgage in like 16, 17, 18, 19, then you're sitting pretty. Everybody else got the big old shaft, you know.
Yeah, I saw a lot of videos of people being like, we thought this was our starter home, but now it's our forever home because our interest rate is so low. You know, I think higher education is a really interesting issue, and I think that the Biden administration is really going to struggle to deal with it during the campaign. You know, we talk about this a lot, or I bring it up a lot, like Biden keeps saying, "Oh, I've forgiven all these student loans," but tons are tied up in court.
That's inflationary.
And also, he hasn't stopped issuing federal student loans. And in fact, so there are tons of, I was just reading this report about how many students are thinking that they're not going to enroll in college because the FAFSA rollout, the free application for federal student loans, got so messed up. The fact that there were so many students who don't know what kind of aid they're being offered, or they had to get secondary letters that were like, actually, we offered you an incorrect amount. I mean, the very small area that Biden thought that he would really just like carry and beat Trump, you know, people interested in going to college and who are willing to take out these loans, they haven't done anyone any favors. And it continues to be this message to, I think, young Americans that, you know, you are trying very hard to establish yourselves and potentially start on a strong financial foot. And no matter which way you turn, you cannot do that right now. And I just don't think that brings voters to the polls.
The other incentive that the state and college universities of higher, or institutions of higher education, colleges, universities, what they actually end up subsidizing is more immigration. Because at the end of the day, like, who's actually making sure that the research universities can continue what they do? It's like foreigners. Like, you think of like
it could be Americans, but they
you think of like
allow you to bring in other
you think
people.
of like the archetypical like rich Saudi prince who finds his way to like Harvard, right? Like, that guy's paying an arm and a leg to go to Harvard. Meanwhile, you know, you have all sorts of discounts, all sorts of scholarships, all sorts of, you know, students not actually paying full price for tuition, and the, you know, institution basically contracting with the government to get that funding over a longer period of time. And then if the state decides to forgive the loans of the students and continue to pay it out over time, it only incentivizes more and more foreign students coming into our universities and paying an arm and a leg, which, like, ultimately, like, I saw it on my college campus, like, it crowds out a lot of people from a public university system where I grew up in the state of California, when, like, technically their parents have been paying for that, you know, institution of education their entire lives through California taxes, and now they don't have access to it. Because, sorry, it's like financially infeasible for them to actually have Californians go to a Californian public school.
Imagine what Social Security is going to be like.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That'll be fun.
It's a train wreck. It's going to be a massive mess.
And this is why, it's one of the reasons why they're flooding the country with non-citizens. They are desperate to create a labor force that will support the elderly who don't have families and rely on Social Security.
I mean, yeah, I think there's truth to that, but I think that if that's their plan, it's a very, very bad plan that's not going to, it's too little too late.
But it's burning the country down to save the country that's on fire.
It's horrible. It's a terrible, terrible idea.
They admitted that at like a Davos panel, right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
I'm just speaking generally that they need a labor force because you've got older people who don't have families. You've got older people who no longer rely on families and their children at all, and they're getting Social Security. When Social Security stops, it doesn't matter how much money you print. They could just print the money and say, just we will pull the debt. And then there's not enough young people producing resources for the elderly. Yeah. So it's that means the system stops instantly overnight.
There's a lot of people that are currently banking on like AI and automation, robots, and they're saying, or they're even if they aren't saying it, they're planning on or behaving as if they're planning on super productivity because of automation, because of robots, because of AI and stuff. The answer to the production problems is automation.
So our
and
answers
AI.
are immigration, so people who are not encouraging native people to have children, or technology. Like, this is a bleak future here.
Right.
I don't like this at all.
This
Oops, we've sterilized you.
Oh, as it turns out, we told you to hate having a family,
Yeah.
and we brought in people that weren't a part of our culture, and they occupy our land, and also maybe technology yourself. It's like, this is doomsday scenario.
My analysis is not an endorsement. I'm just
No,
saying.
I don't think it is. I'm just,
You know,
I am just saying.
But like that, I mean, that's what it is. That the argument they've made is, bringing people in because there are jobs that the people that live there, currently live here, don't want to do or whatever, and then they're, we don't have enough people being born, so we have to have people come into the U.S.
It's funny how immigration's their answer for everything.
I mean, it really is. It's
almost
an
like
answer
it's
for a
on
lot of
purpose.
things.
So I don't want to derail or go down the rabbit hole a little too far, but like, we talked about this underclass, or we talked about, tech services, AI filling the gap. Like, what do you think that looks like, right? In a country that has decided it's no longer going to reproduce and that it's just going to rely on this permanent underclass of migrants.
It just ceases to exist.
Yeah.
It's like the movie Elysium. You will have...
That's a great flick.
You will have, it's a little on the nose, I guess. The earth is overcrowded and everyone speaks Spanish, and the rich people live in a floating space station and they all speak French, and they have machines that can cure any disease, but they've simply decided not to give it to people for no reason. Like, yeah, that's not the reality, but that's the leftist, the leftist worldview is they have the cure for all diseases. They just simply don't want you to have it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, that's not the case. It's certainly the case to a certain degree that big pharma has an incentive on treating symptoms and not diseases. But in this movie, they literally had machines that cured cancer, and they're like, but we won't let you use it for no reason. And then the liberators come, invade the space, steal everything, reprogram it, and strip them of their wealth and access, and then send all of these med booths down to Earth so that everyone can be cured of their diseases. And then what they don't show you is Elysium 2, and everyone's dead. So basically what happens is, if the United States continues to function this way, with fewer and fewer people of merit and production and who hold the values which made the country what it is, you will end up with an enclave. A small group of people who maintain the traditional values of the United States, believe in meritocracy, are wealthy and successful, and they start building barriers around themselves as they're surrounded by more and more people who do not have the merit and the capability to build a nation. And then, finally, after a certain amount of time, the dam breaks. The 92% of lower merit individuals who are not part of the culture and don't have the same education destroy what little wealth and access there was. And then you'll end up in a country where you've got mass rapes and farmers being killed and things like this and displaced.
Yeah.
And weird hokey views about AIDS being a curse and things like that.
And none of this takes into account what happens to what the rest of the world does or what other near peer powers do without the United States having the economic powerhouse behind it that it has had historically. Because the United States, like the idea that China doesn't do anything or the idea that Russia doesn't do anything in response to the United States having an economic crisis, that's something that I think people don't take into account when they talk about repercussions of like the dollar crashing or whatever kind of big civil strife or whatever issue you want to use your favorite doomsday scenario in the U.S. People talk about that kind of stuff, and they always leave out what the rest of the world does. The United States is it's so important in the world that everything that happens to the United States actually happens to the whole world. So you don't get things that just happen to the United States; they happen to the world. So if the United States stops being like the global hegemon for whether you think it's good or bad, if it does, that means there are going to be massive reverberations throughout every country on Earth, and it's going to change the way that the world behaves. And we have no idea what that means.
Do you have any predictions on the economic ripple effect there?
I mean, something that I keep an eye on frequently is just how badly we are treating the global South in terms of like the developing economies of the global South, right? Like we have decided that we are going to sanction anyone who we decide to up the wazoo. Sanctions don't really work anyway. It doesn't actually lead to...
Sanctions are an act of war.
Exactly. And it doesn't actually lead to the behavior changes that we want to see. And so we just keep doing it. And we decide that we're going to incentivize completely parallel political and financial institutions and systems that are dominated by What country? Of course, China. So I mean, I don't have any predictions on what that actually means long term for the United States. I think there was more of an expectation. I thought China would do better post-COVID than it has. Maybe it's because of their commitment to COVID zero. But
economically, you mean?
Yeah. Okay. I think they would. I thought they were going to rebound quicker than that. And I've had some scholars tell me that, China isn't doing as well as you think it is, but nevertheless, like, don't empower them when they're showing demographic decline, when they're showing economic slowdown, by basically incentivizing the entire global South to partner with China, whether it's the Belt and Road Initiative or other types of financial arrangements to skirt around Western sanctions.
I imagine anytime China can export young men to work, like if they can send them to other countries to work, that's a good thing for China because they have so many young men that because of the one-child policy, they have an excess of young men, which is one of the things that I've heard people people that are experts on international conflict and stuff. One of the things they say is if you've got too many young men, you're headed to war, because one of the things historically that's taken care of young men when there aren't women is send them off to war, because if you don't do something with your young men and they don't have families, they might overthrow the country. Like they might just cause a riot. They might tear your whole country down.
This was the Sparta problem. Aristotle talks about this in the Politics, where Sparta knew how to wage war. They had policies enacted to favor male childbirth. And then when they finally got to a position where they could make peace, they had no idea how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is going to happen to the U.S. in the next, year? What do you think's the biggest concern for people or for American politicians right now? Is it geopolitical or is it domestic issues?
I think it's geopolitical, just simply because I think the Republican Party demonstrated with the $95 billion supplemental that they actually care about wars in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe more than they care about the border.
Yeah.
So if the Republican Party and the establishment is going to be so singularly focused on these two issues, then it's a powder keg ready to explode. I wish I could say like immigration will be the issue that like galvanizes and draws the most attention, and then we can actually solve the issue. But just the prospect of World War III, it just feels like it's lurking around every corner.
I feel like it would have been the big issue, like immigration would have been the big issue had it not been for October 7th. I feel like last year and last summer, this time, everybody was so very focused on the border. Everyone was focused on what was going on. It was a massive big deal.
I think immigration is still a big issue, even though we had October 7th, because I think
it's still one of the biggest issues among voters, and Israel doesn't even rank in the top 10.
Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe, and we'll see you all there.